What's the worst thing a doctor has ever said to you? Story 1. It was to my husband. I was in the room.
I'm not going to figure out what it is. If it was serious, you'd be dead by now.
Later, we found out that this doctor was the one that my husband's uncle was seeing before he was diagnosed with colon cancer. By the time another doctor found it, it was too late. He said there was no way it should have been missed. Story 2. A little over a decade ago, I got hung up in my neighborhood and really tuned up. Like really tuned up. I was taken to a hospital and given a whole battery of scans and x-rays. The first hospital said that I needed surgery to have some sort of plates attached to my orbitals due to the number of fractures around both eyes. Our guy for this is out of town and doesn't come back for a few weeks, and we really think this needs to be done ASAP to avoid you possibly losing your sight down the road. We are going to transfer you to second hospital for the surgery. So, they put me in another ambo and shipped me down the road. The second hospital did all the same scans and tests as the first. After a few hours, the surgeon came around and introduced himself and said he had a few questions. The first question was, do you have insurance? I did not. Well, the good news is, you don't need surgery. He never got to the rest of his questions. 12 years later, and I'm going blind my left eye. No, I've never been totally sure which direction that came from. Maybe you could have some insight. Was that surgeon going to perform an unnecessary surgery because he could bill my insurance for it? Or did he not perform a necessary surgery because he didn't think they'd get paid? I can't really imagine the doctor caring if this person doesn't pay or not. It doesn't really affect their salary. Like the hospital isn't going to be like, oh yeah, this patient didn't pay, so instead of making 300 grand, you're gonna make 250K this year. Story 3. When I was 19, my primary care doctor, Mal, told me he could do a pap smear for me at my physical. When I told him I already had a gynecologist, he said, I can do it professionally or personally. Needless to say, I never saw him again and reported him. Yeah, this doctor clearly thought he had the Riz, but he did not have the Riz. He was diagnosed as Rizless. I gotta stop saying Riz. Is that still, I feel like no one says that now. I'm the only person that probably says it now. Story 4. This is very similar to mine. Went to a female primary doctor when I was like 13, and she said she needed to ask me personal questions that I might not be comfortable answering in front of my mom. And she wanted honesty, so my mom very begrudgingly left. She told me I looked anemic and asked me if I was on my period. I told her no. She said that she usually sees these signs in younger girls because they are having some bleeding issues with their periods. She asked me if I was a virgin. I asked why, and she said it's because she wanted to know whether or not my hymen was broken, so she would know in advance of the pap smear she was about to give me. I'm 13. I don't even fully know what a pap smear was. It was not broken yet. She broke it. She had me in stirrups with tools holding me open, and it effing hurts, and she just went in with her fingers with no lubrication. It finished. She said she called my mom with the results. We left. I didn't tell my mom because I figured she knew, and I was just embarrassed from the whole thing. Stopped me from going to gyno for a long time. My mom brought up that doctor when I was like in my 20s, and I was like, yeah, I didn't like her. She was not careful with that pap smear. And my mom looks at me and says, what pap smear? I was never told this. She gave you a pap smear without consent from me? Turns out, that's not okay. Went to a gyno a little over a year ago and had a proper pap smear, and it was not like what I had experienced before. There wasn't really any pain. I wasn't put in stirrups. She was a super duper gentle. I was surprised to learn lubrication would be used. There was no blood, etc. Yeah, that wasn't great to realize. Story 5. I tried almost the same. I was 14. I was getting on medicine where I was forbidden to get pregnant because there would be horrible birth defects if it had happened. So in order to get that medicine, I needed to be on birth control. My doctor asked me if I was a virgin, which I confirmed. He called in a nurse and told me he needed to do a quick exam to confirm this before prescribing birth control. He said, this might hurt, so the nurse will hold your hand. And then he just broke my hymen, which hurt like hell. I remember crying and not understanding what happened. He confirmed that I was indeed a virgin and prescribed birth control. He patted me on my back as I left and called me a good girl. I still hate him with his burning intensity of 1,000 desert suns. In addition to that, several years later, I learned that he did not have to do that in order to prescribe birth control. And since I was a minor, he needed my parents' permission. My parents was horrified when I told them years later. I wonder if you could sue them. Like, if you think about it, I'm sure this was probably documented, you know. They have to document everything according to what I know. So if this is documented, wouldn't this be kind of an easy lawsuit? I'd imagine, I think. Story 6. I had something similar. I was 17 and saw a male doctor because I was scared I had an STD. He told me I had to give him a list of the names of all the men I'd had sex with. I was so young and very naive as this was a country area. And also, I think I was naive by nature, so I gave him the names. He made it clear that I'd been shameful. In reality, it was just 2 or 3 guys. Then he said he had to test me. He used some kind of tool to take a small chunk of the inside of my labia. Hurt like hell. He He then put vinegar straight onto the cut. Hurt like hell. He said that was part of the test for STDs. After that, I was messed up for years. I kept going to doctors thinking there was something wrong with my genitals. It took one very kind doctor to realize I had an emotional and not a physical issue, and he sat me down and told me that my vagina was in A1 condition. That was beautiful and I had nothing to worry about. He said it in the most wholesome, genuine way and respectful way, and after that I felt okay about my body again. Story 7. This was overheard by a friend of mine when a neurosurgeon looked at the CT of her son's brain. There's no point in doing this one. This kid is done. I'm out of here. The good news is another neurosurgeon did the surgery and the kid, now about 40, is perfectly fine today. Another story I heard while working in a hospital, but cannot verify, a guy was gravely injured due to being shot in the face. There was no chance of recovery, and he was expected to die within a very short period of time. An intern walks in the room and says, "Is this the guy we're going to harvest the kidneys from?" The doomed patient was reported to have reacted by briefly bolting up into a sitting position. I hope it is not true, but they did get the kidneys. Can you imagine? Like, you think there might be some hope, you just got shot in the face. And as you're just finally starting to have this conviction of like, no, I'm going to make it, I'm going to live, then there's some random just doctor's like, yeah, this is the person we're going to harvest the kidneys from. Jeez, talk about just, kind of just putting something down. Story 8. My job involves being the background of phone calls between various kinds of doctors and can 100% confirm that neurosurgeons are the absolute most heartless. We had one ER doctor talking to a neurosurgeon about a guy having a stroke, and all the surgeon wanted to know was if he was an organ donor. The ED doctor said he wasn't comfortable asking the family that yet when they were still hoping for intervention, but the surgeon went back down. It was brutal. Story 9. I would constantly complain to my doctor that I couldn't breathe when I would walk, and I would get this shortness of breath. I was always tired and fatigued. I would get dizzy if I walked too long. She always brushed it off and told me to get more sleep or drink more water, even though I was getting plenty of both. Finally, I made an appointment to talk to her face to face, and she flat out just told me I was lazy and needed to exercise more. I was so embarrassed because I went with my husband, and she made me feel like I was just this lazy couch potato. I switched doctors, and my new doctor decided to do some blood work, which is something that other ladies should have done in the first place, and found I was severely anemic to the point of needing blood transfusions. I felt so much better after I got my transfusions. Some people just shouldn't be practicing medicine. Yeah, there's nothing like doctors just gaslighting you. I've had similar kind of experiences where doctors have just kind of failed me. I remember I went in for like a breathing issue, and somehow I came out with anxiety disorder. Don't know how that happened, but I can kind of tell you I definitely do not have anxiety disorder. And yeah, the medication they prescribed me, just obviously just did not go well for me. Story 10. I had something similar, but definitely less serious. Every time I went to a doctor, they'd look in my ears and complain they couldn't see anything because the wax buildup. My mom would tell me I need to clean them more. At one point, I was cleaning them with a Q-tip almost every day. Finally, I saw a doctor who said she couldn't see anything, but decided to do something about it. I had said how often I cleaned them. She warned me against Q-tips. We spent almost 2 hours cleaning my ears. My ears bled. She had it looked like I had an ear infection one ear for quite a while, but it was hidden under the wax. I refuse to use Q-tips now and often have a doctor drain them for me. I had minor hearing loss in the ear that had the infection. It's amazing what having the right doctor can do for you. It's very important whenever it comes to medical issues with your life. You need to have the mindset that you're an advocate for your health and you're going to do whatever you need to do, because you honestly cannot just trust a doctor. It's very important, if you ever have these gut feelings or suspicions or so, to get second opinions occasionally, Chances are doctors can and will fail you, but what's very important is getting a second, a third opinion, checking other ways to get these medical opinions. Also, doing your own research is very helpful too. There's actually this very interesting case where there was this vet, and in the vet, they were having issues. This person was bringing his dog to the vet, and they couldn't figure out the disease that this dog was having. So what this person ended up doing was he sent the blood work results to ChatGPT, which is an AI for anyone that doesn't know, and this AI was able to make an educated guess on what the disease possibly could be. The patient let the doctor know of this, and then they started prescribing the proper medication for this disease. And what ended up happening was the doctor ended up getting better, and it was actually diagnosed successfully. And that's because this person decided to do their own research. So please, when it comes to anything, please do your own research, get multiple opinions, medical opinions, I want to make very clear. And yeah, story 11. That I had bipolar disorder. I was medicated for it. It didn't work. So he kept increasing the dose. Eventually, I was taking 800 milligrams of Seroquel a day. I was so doped up, I couldn't read, dropped out of college. I couldn't sleep without it anymore. And when I tried, I stood up for almost a week. Had to move back with my father because I wasn't able to care for myself anymore. I tried to commit a couple of times. Ended up under observation. Doctor considered shock therapy. After almost 10 years lost, I had switched doctors, found a good therapist, and started the process to remove the meds. Turns out I'm not bipolar. I'm autistic. I don't have mania. I have sensory overload and hyperfocus. I act weird when put in chaotic situations because they overwhelm me. After 2 years of therapy, neurologist and psychiatrist appointments, and hundreds of pages of diaries and reports written, I finally got a proper diagnosis and I'm free from that. I'm not getting those 10 years back though. My mom died during that time. I'm not getting her back either. I'm in college again, but the opportunities I lost are gone forever. And the doctor, he's still out there getting paid by the effing drug company to push their product. F him. Again, I will reiterate the point that you have to be your own advocate, and if a certain medication or so just is not sitting right with you, do not settle and please consider different options. Story 12. I have an effing doozy for you all if I'm not too late. My sister called me in tears, saying she couldn't even stand up. She was in so much pain. I absolutely bolted to her house, find her vomiting in so much pain she can hardly move. Got her in the car, got to the hospital. They moved her into the ED pretty damn quick as she was screaming in pain. My champion of a sister managed to answer the questions whilst dealing with the worst pain of her life. She did her best to comply with her exams, etc. Eventually, a doctor comes in and says they suspect she has an STD that is causing the pain, except there's no STD showing up on their panels. He tells us it's his best guess, tells us we can be on our way, and leaves the room. Cue my sister vomiting and excruciating pain every time she moved. We pressed the call bell, and they asked what was up. I said there was absolutely no way we could leave the hospital with her in this condition. The nurse just scoffed at us, then left. We were left in ED with my sister vomiting in pain, telling me she was going to die. Every call button press resulted in literally no one coming to see us. If they did, we got told there are bigger emergencies than you right now. She had at least 7 buckets of sick sitting on the shelf from how much pain she was in, and no one saw us for about 2 to 3 hours. I'm not even exaggerating. She was eventually transferred, because we became too annoying I guess, to an observation unit overnight. I had to go home because they wouldn't let me stay. The next day I got there, my sister was an effing shell of herself. She was literally gray and said the pain was still there. She just didn't have the energy to fight it anymore. I told her since she was in the hospital, at least she was safe, but she told me she legitimately thought she was going to die. A day later, she calls me. They finally did an ultrasound after 3 days. Apparently NZ hospitals have no ultrasound technicians on for holiday periods, and told me her ovary was twisted around a ridiculous amount of times. She said they have to operate right effing now. She is lucky to be alive. The hospital wouldn't allow us to have any documentation about her operation or anything. They told us it was not her information to have. The fact that doctor wrote her off as having an STD and never looked into anything else until the last moment when she was going septic sickens the F out of me. And the fact ovarian torsion is a medical emergency whilst we were being told there were bigger things to worry about, I'm just glad she's still effing there. Story 13. When my mom smashed her shoulder to pieces in New Zealand, she was sat for hours, shivering and rocking back and forth in the emergency department waiting room. She asked for pain relief several times and didn't arrive until someone finally saw her x-ray. Then everyone came running to help her. She was told, "We've had rugby players with that kind of injury and they roll around on the floor screaming, so we didn't think you were in that much pain." But people don't show pain the same way. My mom and I got very pale and quiet, but my dad would probably scream the house down over a splinter. Yeah, some people are just built different. Like, I don't know if you guys ever met people that, like, you know, just kind of broke their arm and they're just chilling. They're like, "Yeah, what's up? Yeah, even though my arm's twisted a different way, I'm chilling." Those people exist. They're crazy, but they exist. Story 14. 3 years ago, I went for an eye test. The optician gave me a note and told me to go directly to an eye hospital. I gave the note to a reception at the eye hospital. The lady said, "Oh, right, come this way." I was taken right through the waiting room and put in a CT scanner within 20 minutes of arrival. Shortly after, a doctor came and said that there is something in the middle of your brain and that an ambulance is going to take me to a neurosurgery specialist hospital. A few hours later, I was having a drain put into my skull to get rid of the built-up spinal fluid pooling behind my eyes. An MRI scan revealed a golf ball-sized cyst in the middle of my head that was causing problems. That was a pretty bad day. What do you mean that was a pretty bad day? There was literally something inside your brain. I think that's that's beyond a bad day. That's a horrible day, my guy. Story 15. I had my appendix taken out about 15 years ago. Went to the ER in horrible pain. They kept telling me female problems and would send me home. I went back again later that night, and all they wanted to discuss was my sexual history and insisted I was either pregnant or a cyst on my ovaries. I saw a guy I know the next morning, like the ER told me to, but before my appointment with her, I went into shock while taking a bath to ease the pain and had to be dragged out by my boyfriend at the time and his grandma. I went to my appointment. She diagnosed me with appendicitis immediately and sent me to the ER again. Different one this time. That doctor kept telling me female problems as well. Told me to come back the next day for blood work and a CT. This is 3 days now. I come in for blood work and a CT, but now I can hardly walk. I'm vomiting in the parking lot and have lost control of all my other bodily functions in the lobby. Finally, get to the CT, and they're all like, oh crap, let's get you into surgery right now. I spent 7 days in the hospital, 2 surgeries. My stomach was left open, it was packed for 5 days before the infection was so bad. When I was in recovery, the sweet, kind surgeon who actually helped me was there and told me how lucky I was to be alive because I was septic and the infection was basically eating away at my other organs. I have a scar from my belly button to my groin with about 50 staples. Then I got slapped with an $86,000 bill. Story 16. A couple years ago, went to the doctor for headaches and stress. I run my own business. He sent off for some tests and an MRI cause of the headaches. I never had headaches before. Told me to take a vacation and relax, that I was probably just overworking myself in stress for my business. So I took the whole family, wife, kids, dog, on a nice getaway to the Smoky Mountains and rented us a nice private cabin and had 5 whole days to relax and take in beauty of the smokes. Got to our cabin around 4 p.m. It was amazing. Indoor pool, billiard table, indoor putt-putt golf, and an arcade room all for yourselves. I know this sounds extravagant and expensive, but we actually paid like $1,000 for the whole week. I thought it was a great deal for everything that was included. Woke up the next morning excited to check out Pigeon Forge, and the kids wanted a go-kart and all that as well. Well, 8:30 a.m., I check my email against my wife's advice, and I see an email from my doctor with the results of my MRI. It read like this: Mr. XXXX, the results of your MRI have been reviewed by our medical team, and we have found a large brain tumor on all of the scans. Please contact us immediately to schedule more testing and to speak with a neurosurgeon. Try relaxing on a vacation after reading that. Story 17. At 30, I was rushed into hospital out of the blue with a heart infection and needing a valve replacing. The professor was absolutely brilliant, but she told me off the record that you may want to get any close family to come and visit and sort out any important paperwork, as it's not guaranteed that you'll wake up again. I obviously pulled through, but her honesty was reassuring, and even after 10 years, we still send the odd handwritten letter to each other. We also had these stupid personal televisions at each bed, which cost about $2 an hour to watch. The money would seriously rack up as I was in there for weeks, but she blagged me a pirated code so that I could watch it for free. Story 18. In middle school, I was seeing a psychiatrist for generalized anxiety and panic disorder. I had been struggling with my weight because I was too anxious to eat, and at one point I was about 15 pounds underweight. I started taking antidepressants and gained weight once my anxiety started improving. One day my psychiatrist brought me over to a scale so he could weigh me. He told me that I needed to watch what I was eating because I was starting to get fat. I was finally at the low end of a healthy weight after struggling for months, and it was such a blow to my self-esteem after all the progress I had made. I broke out in tears as soon as he said that to me. It crushed me. My mom yelled at him, and we walked out of his office and never came back. Yeah, from my experience, some doctors just don't care. They're weird, and it can be brutal. I remember one time I was bulking. I was heavy into weightlifting, and I was, purposely trying to gain weight. So I might have a little excess fat, but, I had a decent amount of muscle and all that. And I weighed myself, and the guy's like, oh, you've gained a lot of weight. And I'm like, okay, is there, what should we do about that? He's like, oh, nothing, but you've gained a lot of weight. They just have no filter. I think there's kind of a lack of education when it comes to kind of the psychological aspect when it comes to patient and doctor dynamics. What I mean by that is there is a specific way you should be talking to patients. It should be in a very professional manner, but I don't think doctors are really taught that, which is very upsetting because doctors do hold a very big stake in a lot of families. It's like, why aren't we training doctors to kind of be more empathetic and be professional?